The political landscape continues to churn with a flurry of high-stakes developments as the U.S. administration navigates complex international relations and simmering domestic controversies. From a decisive shift in Ukraine policy to internal rifts within the Justice Department and escalating trade disputes, the week has underscored a period of assertive action and challenging dynamics for the White House. A significant pivot in foreign policy emerged on Monday, with reports from Axios indicating President Trump's intent to announce an aggressive new plan for providing weapons to Ukraine. This move gained further clarity as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed a productive conversation with U.S. Special Envoy Keith Kellogg. Posting on X, Zelensky detailed discussions focused on practical steps to accelerate peace, including strengthening Ukraine's air defense, joint production and procurement of defense weapons in collaboration with Europe. And of course, sanctions against Russia and those who help it. He emphasized Kyiv's reliance on U.S. leadership, stating, "It is clear that Moscow will not stop unless its unreasonable ambitions are curbed through strength." This sentiment was echoed by President Trump himself, who affirmed the U.S. would send Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine, signaling a notable souring of his relations with Russian President Vladimir Putin and a firmer stance against Moscow's aggression. This strategic re-evaluation suggests a renewed commitment to bolstering Ukraine's defense capabilities, potentially reshaping the conflict's trajectory and placing additional pressure on Russia. Domestically, the fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein files continues to create turbulence, particularly within the Justice Department and among the administration's conservative base. Reports had surfaced that Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino was considering stepping down amidst an uproar over how the Justice Department handled the probe into Epstein's death and alleged clientele. President Trump, addressing reporters on Sunday, confirmed he had spoken to Bongino, stating, "Oh, I think so. I spoke to him today. Dan Bongino, very good guy. I've known him a long time. I've done his show many times. He sounded terrific, actually." The controversy highlights a critical loyalty test for some Trump allies, as CNN observed, where allegiance to the Make America Great Again MAGA base, long suspicious of the Epstein case, may clash with the official findings of the administration's Justice Department. This tension intensified after a joint memo released last Monday by the FBI and Justice Department. Led by Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel, found no evidence to support numerous long-held conspiracy theories about Epstein's death or his alleged client list. This conclusion drew criticism from conservative influencers including Laura Loomer and Elon Musk, who had anticipated major revelations and a lot of names as previously pledged by Bondi. Both Patel and Bongino, a former conservative podcaster, had themselves previously voiced suspicions about the Epstein case before joining the FBI, underscoring the deep-seated skepticism within a segment of the Republican electorate. Beyond these immediate crises, the administration continues to project an assertive posture on multiple fronts. King Charles extended an unprecedented second state visit invitation to President Trump for September, a diplomatic coup for the White House, although the reception at the Club World Cup final in New Jersey on Sunday, where Trump was reportedly booed, offered a contrasting public sentiment. On the economic front, trade tensions with the European Union remain high. French President Emmanuel Macron called on the EU to defend European interests resolutely after President Trump threatened to impose a hefty 30% tariff on nearly all imports from the bloc. While the EU has moved to de-escalate, pausing €21 billion of retaliatory tariffs until August 1, White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett indicated that Trump seeks better trade deal offers and is prepared to proceed with threatened tariffs on both Mexico and the EU if improvements aren't made. This aggressive stance on trade mirrors the administration's broader approach, also evident in the extraordinary display of federal agents descending on Los Angeles's MacArthur Park, a move denounced by city leaders as a political stunt amidst ongoing immigration raids. Even internal reforms are on the table, with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem revealing the president's desire to remake the Federal Emergency Management Agency FEMA rather than eradicate it, suggesting a new deployment strategy for the agency. Meanwhile, a Senate committee report on last year's attempted assassination of Trump in Pennsylvania highlighted a cascade of preventable failures, calling for more severe disciplinary action against the Secret Service. As these interconnected narratives unfold, the coming weeks promise to be pivotal. The new assertive posture towards Ukraine could redefine the conflict and U.S.-Russia relations. The ongoing internal dynamics within the Justice Department and the broader Republican base regarding the Epstein investigation will test loyalties and shape political discourse. And the looming trade deadlines will determine the immediate future of transatlantic economic relations. The administration's willingness to challenge established norms both domestically and internationally ensures that the spotlight will remain firmly fixed on Washington. As the implications of these decisions reverberate globally, in a rare and striking display of dissent, former President Donald Trump has been ratioed on his own social media platform Truth Social for the first time, signaling an unprecedented rift within his loyal base. The backlash erupted over his administration's handling of the long-awaited Jeffrey Epstein files, a development that has sent ripples through conservative media and political circles, challenging the narrative control typically enjoyed by the former president on his bespoke platform. The term ratioed, a social media phenomenon indicating a post has received significantly more replies than likes or shares, typically signifies widespread criticism and unpopularity. Trump's post defending Attorney General Pam Bondi and urging supporters to move past the Epstein saga garnered a staggering 44,500 replies against just 12,800 shares and 39,000 likes as of Sunday, July 13, 2025. This imbalance is particularly notable given Truth Social's reputation as a stronghold for Trump's most fervent followers, making such widespread opposition an extraordinary event. The controversy stems from a memo released last week by Bondi's Justice Department jointly with the FBI, which stated there was no incriminating client list or evidence to suggest Epstein had blackmailed high-profile figures. This finding, based on a review of over 300 gigabytes of data, directly contradicted repeated pledges from Trump and his officials, including Bondi herself, who had previously hinted at revelations of a lot of names and a lot of flight logs related to the deceased sex offender. As recently as February, Bondi had told Fox News that Epstein's client list was sitting on my desk right now to review. Remarks she later sought to clarify as pertaining to the entire file and other documents. The perceived backtracking ignited a firestorm among conservatives who had eagerly awaited the release of the Epstein files, viewing them as a potential exposé of powerful figures. Trump, responding to the growing frustration, took to Truth Social on Saturday to defend Bondi, writing in all caps, "Let Pam Bondi do her job," and encouraging his supporters to not waste time and energy on Epstein. He further characterized critics as selfish people trying to hurt his perfect administration, adding dismissively, "For years it's Epstein over and over again, somebody that nobody cares about." This sentiment echoed his public frustration last week when he retorted to a reporter asking about Epstein, "Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? That is unbelievable." However, Trump's attempt to quell the controversy backfired spectacularly. Prominent voices within his orbit quickly voiced their displeasure. Far-right commentator Laura Loomer, a close Trump ally, took to X, formerly Twitter, to warn of a lack of transparency at the Justice Department and its potential political cost at the next election. Elon Musk, a significant campaign donor to Trump, also weighed in on X, urging the former president to just release the files as promised, despite having previously deleted posts accusing Trump of being in the Epstein files himself. The dissent wasn't limited to online platforms. At a conservative conference hosted by Turning Point USA in Tampa, Florida, speakers openly criticized the administration's stance. Podcaster Brandon Tatum declared, "I don't think they're telling us the truth about Epstein," while conservative media personality Megyn Kelly accused Bondi of dangling sweet nothings and questioned her consistency, stating, "Pam Bondi was either telling the truth then or she's telling the truth now, but both cannot be true." Robbie Starbuck, another longtime Trump supporter, posted on X, "President Trump rarely loses touch with what's happening among the base, but he's missing the pulse on this one. Even retired Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, Trump's former national security advisor, warned that the Epstein scandal was not going away, emphasizing the massive number of unanswered questions and the need to address the abuse of children by elites. The controversy has also exposed a deepening fault line within the administration itself. Frustrations with the memo's findings led to a contentious meeting between FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino and Attorney General Bondi in the White House last Wednesday. According to CBS News, this feud highlights what some observers describe as a growing division between the FBI and the Justice Department over the Epstein case. Loomer later reported on X that Bongino was seriously thinking about resigning, and CBS News sources confirmed he did not show up to work on Friday. This internal strife, coupled with the public backlash, underscores the profound impact of the Epstein case on the administration's credibility and unity. The unprecedented ratioing of Donald Trump on his own platform marks a significant moment, revealing a rare instance where his base has chosen loyalty to a perceived truth about Epstein over unwavering support for the former president's narrative. It poses a critical loyalty test: Trump or MAGA? The enduring public fascination and conspiracy theories surrounding Epstein's 2019 death by suicide in a jail cell continue to fuel skepticism, particularly when official findings contradict long-held expectations and previous promises. As the 2025 election cycle approaches, the administration's handling of this persistent scandal and its ability to reconcile with a disillusioned segment of its base will undoubtedly be a crucial factor in the evolving political landscape. The Epstein fallout serves as a stark reminder that even the most dedicated political movements can face internal challenges when core beliefs and perceived promises clash with official pronouncements. The political landscape is currently a maelstrom of converging controversies testing the boundaries of loyalty, the nature of accountability, and the very perception of presidential authority. From the lingering shadows of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal to unprecedented challenges to a former president's cognitive fitness, a series of high-stakes events are reshaping public discourse and challenging the cohesion of political movements. At the heart of the current storm is the persistent fallout from the Jeffrey Epstein case, a saga that continues to fuel intense speculation and distrust, particularly among conservative factions. Weeks after the FBI and Justice Department released a joint memo asserting no evidence supported long-held conspiracy theories about Epstein's 2019 death in federal custody or his alleged clientele, the findings have ignited a fierce backlash. Prominent conservative voices ranging from Laura Loomer to Elon Musk have vocally criticized Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel, especially after Bondi's earlier pledges of major revelations, including a lot of names and a lot of flight logs. This discontent has reportedly spilled into the highest echelons of the FBI, with Deputy Director Dan Bongino, a former conservative podcaster known for previously suggesting government concealment of Epstein information, reportedly clashing with Bondi and contemplating resignation. President Donald Trump, addressing reporters on Sunday, confirmed he had spoken with Bongino, calling him a very good guy and stating he sounded terrific actually. Trump's intervention, however, has done little to quell the broader uproar, even as he publicly defended Bondi, writing on Truth Social, "Let Pam Bondi do her job, she's great," and controversially adding that the U.S. should not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about. This attempt to dismiss the issue has only deepened the rift within his Make America Great Again MAGA base, which has long viewed the Epstein case with deep suspicion, reflecting a broader challenge to Trump's perceived loyalty to his core supporters. Indeed, the Epstein fallout has become a litmus test for the MAGA movement, highlighting growing internal dissent. Tucker Carlson, a standard-bearer for the America First movement, has emerged as a leading voice questioning the administration. While Carlson, who campaigned for Trump, maintains, "I like Trump, but I've got my views," his recent criticisms extend beyond Epstein to include Trump's decision to strike nuclear facilities in Iran and a floated policy change for undocumented farm workers. Carlson publicly stated, "The fact that the U.S. government, the one that I voted for, refused to take my questions seriously and instead said, 'Case closed, shut up, conspiracy theorist,' was too much for me." He sharply rebuked Trump's attempt to tie the Epstein furor to the deadly Texas floods, asserting, It's not adequate to say anyone who asked questions is somehow desecrating the memory of little girls who died in Texas. That is not acceptable. This public pushback from a figure of Carlson's stature underscores a critical juncture for the MAGA movement, testing whether it can maintain ideological cohesion or if individual figures can diverge from Trump without losing their influence. While Trump has publicly responded to Carlson, even claiming an apology for Iran remarks, the dynamic reveals a complex relationship marked by peaks and valleys dating back to Trump's first administration. Despite Carlson's past private criticisms of Trump, their reconciliation during Trump's third presidential bid highlighted their mutual exile from mainstream media. Prominent Trump allies like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene and Steve Bannon have come to Carlson's defense, emphasizing his incredibly strong, independent voice and the need for MAGA influencers to ensure core values are represented. This internal debate suggests that while Trump still commands high approval ratings within the Republican base, even his most ardent supporters are now demanding greater adherence to what they perceive as foundational principles. Adding another layer of political turbulence are the escalating allegations surrounding former President Joseph R. Biden Jr.'s cognitive state and the controversial use of an autopen for clemency decisions at the end of his term. Republicans led by President Trump and his allies have launched tandem investigations into claims that Biden was incapacitated and that his staff conspired to take presidential actions in his name. Biden, in a recent interview with the New York Times, vehemently denied these accusations, stating, "I made every decision," and calling Trump and other Republicans liars. He explained the use of the autopen on nearly 4,000 federal convict sentence reductions and dozens of preemptive pardons as a necessity due to the sheer volume of cases. These pardons issued in his final weeks included prominent figures perceived as Trump's enemies such as General Mark Milley, Dr. Anthony Fauci, and members of the House committee that investigated the Capitol riot, as well as members of Biden's own family. Biden explicitly stated his intent to shield these individuals from vindictive criminal investigations by his successor, acknowledging, "Everybody knows how vindictive he is, so we knew that they'd do what they're doing now." The investigations spanning the Trump White House, the Justice Department, and Congress are scrutinizing tens of thousands of Biden White House emails related to clemency decisions. These emails, while not fully public, reportedly detail a structured process where Biden orally granted decisions in meetings, which were then documented by aides and blurbs before the staff secretary Stephanie Feldman managed the autopen's use. Specific examples include Biden's decision to commute 37 of 40 federal death sentences, excluding those for terrorism or mass murder, his shifting stance on a pardon for former Alabama Governor Don Siegelman, and a late-stage pardon for Ernest W. Cromartie II, reportedly influenced by a request from Representative James Clyburn. The political and legal ramifications are significant. Former Biden aides have been compelled to hire lawyers, some invoking the Fifth Amendment to avoid testimony, while Trump has preemptively waived executive privilege to ensure congressional access to internal White House information. This weaponization of legal and investigative processes against a former administration sets a concerning precedent, underscoring a deep partisan divide and a willingness to leverage every available tool in the ongoing political battle. The current confluence of these high-profile controversies, the enduring shadow of Epstein, the internal fracturing of the MAGA movement, and the unprecedented probes into a former president's cognitive fitness and clemency decisions, paints a vivid picture of a political system under immense strain. These events are not merely isolated incidents but interconnected threads in a larger narrative of distrust in institutions, the evolving nature of political loyalty, and the increasing politicization of what were once considered apolitical processes. As investigations unfold and political alliances continue to be tested, the outcomes will undoubtedly shape future elections, redefine the boundaries of executive power, and ultimately determine the public's faith in the integrity of its leadership and democratic institutions. The next few months promise to be a critical period. revealing not only the immediate consequences of these disputes but also their long-term impact on the fabric of American governance. The global economic landscape is once again gripped by a palpable sense of apprehension as former President Donald Trump's aggressive trade policies intensify, sending ripples across international markets and prompting a re-evaluation of the U.S. economic trajectory. European stock markets notably dipped on Monday, July 14, 2025, responding directly to Trump's renewed tariff threats against the European Union and Mexico, highlighting the immediate volatility his approach instills. This comes alongside fresh concerns over his stated desire for a drastically low 1% Federal Reserve policy rate, a move that analysts warn could spell significant trouble for the U.S. economy. Wall Street, famously resilient, has largely adopted a cynical taco Trump always chickens out philosophy, which has seen stock markets like the S&P 500 and Nasdaq hit unprecedented highs despite the looming threats. This belief, born from past instances where Trump announced punitive levies only to pause or delay them, suggests investors don't truly believe he will follow through. "I don't care about tariffs anymore," Max Kettner, an investment strategist at HSBC, told the Financial Times last week, encapsulating this sentiment. Indeed, after an initial April 2 announcement of global tariffs caused a market plummet, Trump quickly introduced a 3-month pause. However, that 90-day extension intended for 90 new trade deals yielded only 2 rough outlines, with the UK and Vietnam leading to yet another postponement of the most severe tariffs to August 1, with Trump himself admitting this new deadline might not be 100% firm. Yet beyond Wall Street's detached optimism, the reality on the ground for businesses directly involved in international trade is far less reassuring. The taco theory, while comforting to investors, increasingly fails to account for the substantial and cumulative impact of tariffs already in effect. As the New York Times reported, President Trump has steadily and dramatically raised U.S. tariffs to levels not seen in a century. A 10% levy is now in effect for virtually all foreign-produced goods, excluding some electronics and semiconductors. Goods from China face a minimum 30% tariff, a rate expected to climb further without a finalized trade deal. The Treasury Department reported a significant jump in tariff revenues to $27.2 billion last month, bringing the fiscal year total to over $113 billion. Beyond these broad strokes, industry-specific tariffs such as 25% on autos and auto parts and 50% on steel and aluminum are already impacting sectors. Most recently, a 50% duty on copper, a critical metal for numerous industries from power lines to electric vehicles, was announced, causing its price on U.S. futures markets to surge to a record high. The Yale Budget Lab, a nonpartisan research center, paints a stark picture of the escalating tariff landscape. The average effective U.S. tariff rate has soared from 2.4% at the end of the Biden administration to a current 15.8%, the highest since the Great Depression. If Trump's latest threats, including 30% on the EU and Mexico and a staggering 50% on Brazil despite the U.S. running a trade surplus with it, go into effect on August 1, this rate is projected to rise to 18%. Should all threatened tariffs materialize, including those against 24 other trading partners like Japan and South Korea, the average tariff rate could hit 20.6%, surpassing even the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, which exacerbated the Great Depression. What happened in his first term is not nearly in the ballpark of what is happening now, noted Ernie Tedeschi, director of economics at the Yale Budget Lab. While broad economy-wide price indexes haven't yet fully reflected these higher tariffs, economists warn this is merely a lag. Many U.S. businesses initially front-loaded inventories or absorbed costs through lower profit margins. However, as inventories dwindle, passing costs onto consumers becomes inevitable. The CEO of Hasbro, for instance, has already indicated potential price hikes for toys this fall. Michael Wolff, an economist at Deloitte Touche Tohmatsu Limited, explained, "I think that higher prices are coming even though the macro data through May has not reflected that yet. As time passes and as inventories dwindle, there is only so long you can hold out." Ian Shepherdson, chairman of Pantheon Macroeconomics, echoed this, recalling that it took months for prices to rise after Trump's 2018 tariffs. The chaotic rollout of these tariffs has already significantly heightened economic uncertainty, impacting the momentum the U.S. economy inherited. While the U.S. saw a strong recovery post-COVID with inflation-adjusted GDP expanding at 2.9% in 2023 and 2.8% in 2024, growth has since weakened. The first quarter of 2025 saw slightly negative GDP growth, largely due to weakened consumer spending and a surge in imports as businesses preempted tariffs. Although the Atlanta Federal Reserve's GDP Now model forecasts a rebound to 2.6% growth for Q2, the first half of the year will have undeniably lagged, with Trump's fixation on tariffs largely to blame. Looking ahead, economic forecasts present a range of scenarios, none entirely reassuring. Deloitte's latest projections, for instance, outline a baseline where the average tariff rate hovers around 15% and the Fed maintains interest rates. In this scenario, GDP growth slows to 1.4% in 2025 and 1.5% in 2026, with unemployment edging up to 4.6%. A more optimistic outlook, where trade tensions ease and tariffs fall to 7.5%, sees growth rebound to 2.9% in 2026, with unemployment remaining around 4%. However, the pessimistic scenario, which envisages a collapse in trade talks and tariffs rising to 25%, predicts a recession, with GDP declining by 1.6% next year and unemployment soaring to 5.7% as the bond market reacts negatively and long-term interest rates increase. Despite the White House's insistence that tariffs are a negotiating tactic to secure better deals, foreign governments remain puzzled by the administration's demands, leading to a growing suspicion that the president's true aim is simply to block foreign products from the U.S. rather than foster trade. Even if legal challenges to Trump's tariff authority succeed this fall, his advisors claim other legal avenues exist, albeit with less flexibility. Regardless of the precise path, it is clear that tariffs have become a cornerstone of the second Trump administration's economic policy. As Kelly and Shaw, a former Trump administration official, noted, at least for the rest of the Trump administration and likely beyond, we'll see some of those tariff rates go up pretty significantly. This tariff man identity, driven by a belief that low tariffs have historically disadvantaged the U.S. and contributed to trade deficits, particularly with China, is reshaping global commerce. While the full economic effects are still unfolding, it is evident that Trump's quixotic effort to manage a global economic superpower like a private enterprise demanding payment for market access has already inflicted considerable and arguably unnecessary harm, with significant implications for businesses and consumers alike in the coming months and years. The political landscape in Washington is experiencing a seismic shift as President Donald Trump's administration navigates a complex tapestry of international commitments and simmering domestic discontent. This past weekend saw pivotal announcements regarding foreign aid and a deepening internal rift within his base over long-standing transparency demands, painting a vivid picture of the multifaceted challenges facing the White House. A significant development emerged Sunday when President Trump affirmed the United States would dispatch Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine, a move that signals a marked shift in the dynamics of the more than 3-year-long conflict with Russia. Speaking from Joint Base Andrews, the president underscored the critical need for these advanced defensive capabilities, stating, "We will send them Patriots, which they desperately need." While the exact number of systems remains unspecified, Trump highlighted a new financial arrangement indicating that Kyiv would bear the full cost. "We basically are going to send them various pieces of very sophisticated military and they're going to pay us 100% for them," he explained, framing the transaction as business for us. This announcement follows a brief pause in arms deliveries earlier in the month and comes ahead of a flurry of diplomatic activity, including the U.S. Special Envoy's trip to Ukraine and Trump's scheduled meeting with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. The president also openly expressed his growing exasperation with Russian leader Vladimir Putin, remarking, "Putin really surprised a lot of people. He talks nice and then he bombs everybody in the evening," and previously accusing Putin of throwing bullshit at Washington. This renewed frustration hints at a tougher stance after months of Russian refusal to accept a U.S. and Kyiv proposed ceasefire. Adding weight to this evolving foreign policy, a bipartisan group of U.S. senators is actively pushing legislation designed to arm President Trump with sledgehammer sanctions against Russia. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, speaking to CBS News, detailed the proposed bill's potential to go after Putin's economy and all those countries who prop up the Putin war machine. This includes the unprecedented ability to impose 500% tariffs on any country that helps Russia, explicitly naming China, India, and Brazil as potential targets. Graham emphasized, "This is truly a sledgehammer available to President Trump to end this war." Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky echoed this sentiment, hailing the bill in an ex-post as exactly the kind of leverage that can bring peace closer and make sure diplomacy is not empty. Furthermore, Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal revealed that discussions with NATO's Rutte would also delve into the legally intricate process of unlocking frozen Russian assets in Europe and the United States, with Blumenthal advocating for the immediate release of the $5 billion held by the U.S. for Ukraine's benefit. The prospect of these potent economic measures, coupled with the Patriot systems, suggests a significant escalation in U.S. pressure on Moscow. Yet as the administration recalibrates its foreign policy, a storm of domestic criticism has erupted from within its most ardent supporters, fueled by the Department of Justice's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. The core of the controversy lies in Attorney General Pam Bondi's Department of Justice denying the existence of a comprehensive Epstein client list, a direct contradiction to years of promises from prominent Trump surrogates to reveal the disgraced financier's secrets. This perceived lack of transparency has ignited outrage across the MAGA world, with many longtime conservatives and Trump allies taking to social media and public forums to voice their displeasure. Retired Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, a former national security advisor, articulated the prevailing sentiment, posting on X that the Epstein affair is not going away and stressing the importance of addressing the massive number of unanswered questions about Epstein, especially the abuse of children by elites. The situation intensified with reports of FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino clashing with Bondi over the lack of transparency and even threatening to resign. This internal friction is particularly notable given that figures like FBI Director Kash Patel, now a high-ranking official, had previously vowed to uncover alleged details and corruption surrounding Epstein, including publicly stating that Trump should roll out the Black Book on day one of his second term. Patel's recent ex-post stating, "The conspiracy theories just aren't true," never have been, only added to the confusion and frustration among the base. President Trump's own defense of Bondi further inflamed the situation. In a lengthy Truth Social post, he lauded Bondi for doing a fantastic job, dismissed Epstein as a creep and an issue nobody cares about, and suggested the files were a fabrication by his political opponents. This attempt to deflect attention and downplay the issue did little to quell the unrest. Activist Laura Loomer warned that the lack of actual results at the DOJ and lack of transparency that translates into incompetence will cost the GOP House and Senate seats, while conservative personality Robbie Starbuck urged the president to end the age of secrets, asserting that Trump was missing the pulse on this one. The fervent demand for accountability, particularly regarding child abuse allegations, has become a litmus test for many within the movement, revealing a significant chasm between the administration's current stance and its supporters' expectations. The coming weeks will undoubtedly test the Trump administration's ability to balance its assertive foreign policy agenda with the growing internal dissent over transparency and perceived broken promises. As Washington pushes for a tougher stance on the global stage, the domestic political landscape remains volatile, with the Epstein controversy serving as a potent symbol of the deeper demand for accountability that resonates with a significant portion of the electorate. The outcomes of these intertwined narratives will shape not only the immediate future of the administration but also the broader trajectory of American politics. The geopolitical landscape, already a labyrinth of complex alliances and shifting powers, appears to be navigating an unprecedented era of internal disarray and external volatility, largely shaped by the unconventional foreign policy approach emanating from Washington. Recent developments. From high-stakes diplomatic failures to escalating trade tensions and the deliberate sabotage of peace efforts paint a vivid picture of a global stage where traditional diplomatic norms are being continuously challenged if not outright upended. At the heart of this unfolding narrative lies a discernible pattern of internal friction and a perceived lack of centralized control within the Trump administration's foreign policy apparatus. Richard Grenell, the president's envoy for special missions, has emerged as a particularly prominent figure in this regard. Described by a White House source to The Hill as a little untethered and a loose cannon, Grenell's operations have reportedly frustrated senior administration officials and compromised critical diplomatic efforts. His handling of negotiations with Venezuela for the release of jailed Americans, for instance, led to their collapse after he allegedly held parallel talks with a Venezuelan official, offering unapproved terms and without coordinating with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. This freelance working style has not only embarrassed the White House repeatedly, as seen when Grenell told Romania to release internet personalities accused of serious crimes or used a private plane without authorization to transport released Americans, but also forced Secretary Rubio to publicly contradict his push to overturn Chevron's operations in Venezuela. The underlying issue, as Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen told The Hill, is that the administration part of it doesn't know what the other's doing, and that can put Americans at risk. This internal disarray extends beyond foreign policy, mirroring a broader chaos within the defense establishment. Elbridge Colby, the Under-Secretary of Defense for Policy, is cited as having driven significant and controversial decisions without the approval of President Trump or Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. This includes the suspension of weapons to Ukraine, a decision later reversed by Trump, and a unilateral review of the AUKUS agreement, which involves the sale of nuclear submarines to Australia. Colby also reportedly pressed Japan and Australia on their plans in the event of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, rattling allies given the U.S.'s own policy of strategic ambiguity. This scenario, where decisions are being made at lower levels without much guidance from above, as noted by Tom Nichols in The Atlantic, suggests a system where no one is really in charge except Trump, which means that on most days and regarding many issues no one is in charge. Such a dynamic, with a president seemingly disengaged from policy specifics and secretaries either incompetent or detached, creates a vacuum that junior officials appear to be filling, often without the necessary checks and balances. Externally, the administration's approach continues to manifest in aggressive trade postures and a confrontational stance towards emerging economic blocs. The recent BRICS Leaders Summit in Rio de Janeiro, held from July 6 to 7, 2025, became a flashpoint for President Trump's America First economic nationalism. In a social media post, Trump declared that any country aligning themselves with the anti-American policies of BRICS will be charged an additional 10% tariff. There will be no exceptions to this policy, reiterating his threat that the bloc was set up to degenerate the US dollar. These warnings, accompanied by letters to over 20 countries detailing new tariff rates, culminated in a steep 50% tariff against Brazil, ostensibly due to a witch hunt against former President Bolsonaro and attacks on U.S. tech companies. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva reacted strongly, asserting that the world does not want another emperor. While the BRICS joint statement criticized attacks on Iran and warned against tariffs, signaling a desire for a reformed multilateral order and reduced reliance on the US dollar, internal divisions within the bloc, such as India's distancing from a common currency idea and its strained ties with China, suggest that Trump's threats, while impactful, may also be viewed as a tactical maneuver in ongoing trade negotiations. The broader push for de-dollarization, it's worth noting, predates BRICS and was significantly spurred by sanctions against Russia, indicating a wider global trend beyond the bloc's direct influence. Further complicating the global diplomatic landscape are persistent challenges in the Middle East, where crucial negotiations have been consistently undermined by spoilers. U.S. efforts to broker a new nuclear deal with Iran were reportedly derailed by Israel's Operation Rising Lion, which launched strikes on Iranian facilities just 2 days before scheduled talks in Muscat. Israeli officials claimed Iran was days from obtaining a nuclear weapon, a claim that contradicted U.S. intelligence assessments. Similarly, Hamas's October 7, 2023 attack on Israel appears to have been deliberately timed to thwart a burgeoning normalization deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia, a continuation of the Abraham Accords. These spoilers, as highlighted by Christopher A. Preble and Griffin Stibber in The National Interest, often harbor maximalist goals, preferring everything or nothing at all, and view any form of negotiation or compromise as a threat to their core interests. The consequences of such derailments are stark. The 12-day war involving Israel, Iran, and the United States resulted in hundreds of casualties. And the prospects for broader peace and normalization in the region have significantly receded. This pattern underscores a critical lesson for U.S. policymakers: the need to anticipate and counteract actors who are unwilling or unable to play the role of spoiler, especially when relying heavily on one-on-one negotiations. In sum, the current state of global diplomacy under the Trump administration is characterized by a unique blend of internal administrative disarray and an aggressive, often unpredictable external posture. From the perceived loose cannons within the foreign policy team to the imposition of sweeping tariffs and the constant threat of diplomatic sabotage, these developments signal a period of profound uncertainty. The implications for international alliances, global economic stability, and regional conflicts are far-reaching, suggesting a future where traditional diplomatic tools may need re-evaluation, and where the world will continue to grapple with the profound and often contradictory impacts of an unconventional approach to global governance.